Hey everyone, RogueGold here, and today we've got a small but to me very inspiring update in the world of The Division 3. After this news, the game is one step closer to being in our hands. Now, it's still going to be years before this thing releases, as I predicted previously, and we'll go over that. But yeah, as somebody whose first Division 3 speculation and dream wishlist video came out over 4.5 years ago, that's insane. This news that we got this week truly hit me in the feels. So, let's waste no time and get right to it. And if you enjoy consistent coverage on everything in the world of The Division, then I hope you'll consider clicking that subscribe button if you haven't already. We'd love to have you. Let's go. So, what exactly is this news, you may be asking? Well, that was that early yesterday morning, we learned that Star Wars Outlaws has gone gold. Now, your first thought might be, what on earth does this have to do with The Division 3? Very quick recap from Professor Rogue here. All the way back in 2013 to 2014 is when a lot of the core and senior Division team members that we would come to know over the years solidified and joined on at Massive if they weren't there already. They worked on and shipped Tom Clancy's The Division 1 in 2016, and then after that split their time between supporting the Division 1's post-launch content, while also breaking ground on Tom Clancy's The Division 2, which then shipped under that same core team in 2019. That team then supported Division 2's Year 1 post-launch content, but was also sprinting to the finish line to get the Warlords of New York expansion out the door 1 year after the base game's launch in March of 2020. Believe it or not, that was the last time that the core unified Division team worked on this franchise. Certain key people stayed on to keep supporting the game, even fewer are still there today as they lead the rebuilt team supplied by Ubisoft Bucharest. But when Ubisoft signed a deal with Disney and Lucasfilm sometime in 2019, it was determined that after the Warlords of New York expansion shipped for the Division 2, the bulk of that core Division team and many of the more prominent and higher up figures within it would move over to begin working on a licensed Star Wars title, which would eventually become Star Wars Outlaws. So that means that, yeah, the OG Division team hasn't been around in over 4 years, but that's about to change. As we learn in the only official communication regarding the Division 3 thus far, back when it was announced last September, Julian Garrity, who was the creative director on the Division 1 and 2 and now Star Wars Outlaws, will transition into being the new executive producer for the entire Division IP, and that role will include him assembling the Division 3 team, which will once again be led by Massive Entertainment. That article also confirmed that he would stay on with Outlaws through its release to ensure that it fulfills the intended vision and quality. What this all means is that the only thing keeping the OG Division team and Julian from jump-starting work on the Division 3 is finishing up their obligations to Star Wars Outlaws. This was also confirmed by reputable insider and gaming industry leaker Tom Henderson a little under a month ago. When asked what the status of the Division 3 was, he said that it will go into full production once Star Wars Outlaws releases. And while that has not yet happened, the full launch is scheduled for August 30th, the next most important milestone was just hit. The game has gone gold. For anyone unfamiliar with that terminology, a game going gold indicates that it's all done and ready to go. As quoted here, the term gone gold is shorthand for the gaming industry phrase gold master. When a game enters this stage of development, it means that it has reached the point where it is finished and ready for release. Everything that the developers want to put into the game is in the most recent build. So, that's pretty exciting. And like I said a moment ago, it was confirmed to us just yesterday that Star Wars Outlaws has indeed gone gold. This was followed up by several messages of celebration and anticipation from people across Ubisoft, but most notably to me from Frederick Thylander, the lead gameplay designer on Outlaws and previously lead 3C designer on the Division 1 and 2, hugely influential guy, and of course by Julian Garrity, the aforementioned creative director on Outlaws and that of the Division 1 and 2 before it. So, like I said guys, this for me, when I saw the news yesterday, was honestly quite moving. It really does not feel like all that long ago to me that myself and many others were convinced that we were set to get a Division 3 announcement heading into early 2021, as we'd gotten for the Division 2 around that same time in Division 1's lifespan, and then that crushing day came around where they did announce that upcoming Star Wars game. Of course I was and am happy for Star Wars fans to be getting an awesome game from Massive, and I know so many of those guys and gals are probably over the moon to have gotten to work on that IP, very happy for them. But as a Division fan, that was undoubtedly one of the saddest days of the past many years since 2016 at that point, no question about it. And I still remember how hopeless I felt, truly. It sounds dramatic when you remember that we're just talking about a video game here, but the Division means everything to me. So to remember so clearly that day compared to now where we get the news that Star Wars Outlaws is complete, it's finished, and that we know that the Division 3 is the very next thing that these people are getting ready to work on and move on to, that feels really, really awesome. Like I mentioned before, the game still has just under 2 months until full release. I'm sure that until then, the team will largely work on polish of what's already there, but going gold indicates that no new content or ideas are going to be put in, right? So what that says to me is that any time between now and the next 2 to 3 months here, shortly after Outlaws release, that's when, behind the scenes, they're going to begin pulling those developers to break ground on the Division 3. And like was confirmed last year, Julian will be stepping into that executive producer role for the franchise at large. That's a position and leadership role that we've never had before for the Division, and now that all of the idea portion of Outlaws has been implemented, I imagine that Division is where his sights are now primarily set. Super exciting stuff. Now, the last thing that I wanted to go over and remind you all of is that while this is very exciting, you cannot forget that we're still a long ways off from still being able to play the Division 3. While I'm sure that work has been done thus far in the pre-production phase for the game, which for any who don't know is simply planning, mapping out general ideas, concepts. In Division terms, that would likely mean deciding upon a rough story outline, choosing what main city to be in, brainstorming what new and returning systems they want to include. Full production has not and will not begin until that core team that we talked about transitions off of Outlaws, as was said by Ubisoft last year, and as Tom confirmed in that tweet that we looked at. Now, even with that in mind, there's some people who think that they're going to crank this game out at record speed and have the Division 3 ready by something like 2026. I am not one of those people. Let's just look at the past 2 games that this team has made, the Division 2 and now Star Wars Outlaws. Division 2 began work in mid-2016 and came out in March of 2019, just under a 3-year turnaround. Star Wars Outlaws, while harder to pinpoint, let's say began work in early 2020, and now is launching in late August 2024, so 4.5 years of work. My personal prediction is that the Division 3 is going to land somewhere in between those two, right? This isn't an all-new IP like Outlaws was, where they had to do everything from scratch. They know what world they're working in, they're going to reuse certain assets and engine optimizations that they've already streamlined for Division games. But at the same time, it was widely reported that the Division 2 was a rushed product. Ubisoft was very firm in wanting that 3-year release cycle window. And although the Division 2 launched in a very solid technical state in spite of that, had the team had an extra 6 months or a year, I think we would have seen a much more polished, tested, and feature-rich experience than we did at launch. And so that's why my personal prediction for the Division 3, as of right now, is a March 2028 release date. That would be just about 3.5 years from when they'll go into full production, and as stated, that aligns with the speed that this development team clearly has in making these big AAA games, accounts for the fact that this is a sequel, using much of the same tech and models as before, but also gives them a bit of breathing room to get things done right. And look, at the end of the day, I will wait as long as need be for this team to be confident in the product they're making. I think we have waited for far too long and endured far too much as a fan base to now put pressure on this team to crank out the 3rd game. What I think we all want is the best Division product seen yet, one that launches well, has tons of stuff to do, and is properly set up for a fun and prosperous future after launch. And so, if that means that they need until 2029 to do that, until 2030, yes, it will suck to wait that long, but I for one will happily do it if that means that they get the proper time to cook. So, a final message here to my fellow fans, and to you, Ubisoft, let them have their space, and let's see what kind of magic we get. My friends, that is all I've got for you on this one today. A small, but in my view, quite significant update in the world of the Division 3, as well as just a bit of a refresher on the project's history, timeline, all of that. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed, found this informative. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on everything down below. What's your reaction to Star Wars Outlaws going gold? Is that a game you've personally been looking forward to playing? And what are your predictions on when we'll actually end up seeing the Division 3, knowing that that's their next endeavor? Appreciate you all tuning in, much more Division content coming your way soon. But that's all for me for today, folks. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. RogueGold. Out.